George Lucas created Star Wars based on inspirations and influences from his youth. Once it transcended to the status of pop culture juggernaut, Star Wars itself became the source of inspiration for future generations of writers and filmmakers, sometimes overshadowing adaptations of the very media that influenced the creation of Star Wars. Circular referencing is when one piece of media goes on to influence another, which in turn comes back round to influence the original media. Sometimes this creates a perception that the last in the chain appears to have ripped off the previous, regardless of which one did it first. And like Star Wars and the Force and the Jedi, circular referencing has a dark side. Referencing isn't unique to Star Wars, George Lucas, or film as a medium. Art and artists have always been influenced by what came before, with some filmmakers building whole careers out of homages to their favourite movies and wearing their influences on their sleeve. Circular is one of two kinds of references. Its counterpart, linear references, are easiest to spot, and this is where the reference posits a straight line of inspiration. Richard Connell's 1924 short story, The Most Dangerous Game, in which humans are hunted for sport on an island, draws a straight line to Kinja Fukasaku's 2000 film Battle Royale, in which schoolchildren are dumped on an island and tasked with killing each other. And from there, it's easy to get to Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games trilogy. Working backwards from The Mandalorian, you'll find Sergio Leone's introduction to The Man with No Name and A Fistful of Dollars and the Dollars trilogy, the inspiration for which came from Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, a samurai movie about a ronin who arrives in a town and puts himself between two warring gangs by playing them off each other. The lines are obvious. Circular referencing, as the name suggests, involves closing a referential loop. 1959 Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein is a novel about mobile infantry grunts fighting aliens while wearing giant mech suits. It would heavily influence James Cameron when he wrote and directed Aliens in 1986, a movie about mobile infantry grunts fighting aliens that ends with the hero facing off against the alien queen while wearing essentially a giant mech suit. Aliens would then go on to influence the look and tone of 1997 Starship Troopers, a movie adaptation by Paul Verhoeven that dumps the mech suits entirely but is still mobile infantry versus aliens. Starship Troopers influences Aliens, which influences Starship Troopers. Stephen King's It, published in 1986, became a piss-poor TV movie in the 1990s. The novel, however, influenced the Duffer Brothers, who, after they failed to get their own It adaptation backed, created Stranger Things, which ironically became the reference point for 2017's It remake.
What was the beginning?
I would say probably the original impetus for the whole thing was, I used to watch a serial on television called Adventure Theater, and they had Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe on it, and I used to love that. So I went off and wrote my own space opera.
George Lucas wanted to make his own adaptation of the Flash Gordon serials, but couldn't get the rights. And Lucas made this no secret, and nor did he hide that Star Wars was influenced by others, such as the films of Akira Kurosawa, John Ford, Frank Herbert's Dune, and Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars books. Because of Star Wars' success, it overshadowed its influences to the point where, when these influences were later adapted for the big screen, they were deemed poor rip-offs of Star Wars. The 1980s film adaptation of Flash Gordon is full of elements many considered stolen from Star Wars. The princess, the metal-faced villain, an emperor who can destroy planets, and alien spaceship dogfights. But these have all been part of the Flash Gordon story since it first aired in the 30s, and would begin with something else you might find familiar. Similarly, fuck, I hate that word. Similarly, 1984's Dune, directed by David Lynch, the man who turned down directing Return of the Jedi, was branded a rip-off and a cash-in on Star Wars and its success. The desert planet, a chosen one messiah, a mysterious power that lets people's speech influence others, a drug called spice. Despite the obvious similarities, these elements all originate from the source material, Frank Herbert's 1965 novel. If an older work has already been drained of its best bits by creators of new works, adapting that older material becomes more difficult, the audience more critical of things they feel that they've seen before. Take 2012's film John Carter and the tepid response it received. The movie focused on a chosen one protagonist on a desert planet trying to save a princess. And if that sounds familiar, it should. No one would blame you for thinking Star Wars A New Hope, but John Carter is based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars books of 1912. George Lucas never hid his influences. Articles on StarWars.com even detail Lucas's love of the John Carter novels and how they inspired Star Wars. and knowing this information gives the audience an opportunity to go back and witness the seeds of its creation. You would not find yourself wasting time if you read the Dune or Mars novels, watched Flash Gordon clips on YouTube, binged Kurosawa and John Ford movies, or dipped your toe into some of the philosophies that inspired the Jedi. In this age of information and easy access to everything, finding the sources that helped make Star Wars or any film or book you love is easier than ever, if you know what you're looking for. And that's the kicker. If a dark side to circular referencing exists, it's where we lose track of older source materials, when we lose sight of the lines that link the old to the new. Sometimes this happens due to age, sometimes because copyright holders don't bother to republish into updated formats, or maybe we just don't know that these older works even exist. By definition, circular referencing brings you back to the start, back to an idea's inception. However you find your way there, if you can spot the references and follow the trail, learning the recipe to a galaxy far, far away is its own reward.
We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, God.